Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Radio Show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNetrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network. We're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Oh, wow. Well, it is another Thursday, and I'm getting more and more and even more excited because very soon we're going to be ending up with over 100 people in Times Square in New York City to celebrate our 6th book in the Art of Connection book series on resilience. And so I just cannot wait to get out there. And this year it's going to be doubly fun because not only am I going to get to bring my mom with me, I'm going to also get to bring my wife. So the two main women in my life are going to be with me. And so, as a son and a husband, it doesn't get any better than that. And so I am so excited. So again, what I'm talking about is the #1 international selling book. And this also comes with an accompanying journal, which will be coming out in the next month or so. And it's 365 days of resilience quotes by entrepreneurs, business owners, and influencers. And this book came about because of that crazy time called COVID some time ago. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a place of hope, inspiration, and support to entrepreneurs, business owners, and influencers who may have been struggling through uncertain and challenging times. You can go to Amazon right now. It's at www.mybook.to/art of connection, the number 6. Again, that's mybook.to/art of connection 6. I also want to talk about a new company that I just started I'm so excited about, and that's iNet Publishing House. iNet Publishing House, where our mission is to guide entrepreneurs, authors, and visionaries, help them create works to inspire hearts. And that's what we're going to be talking about. We have 2 heart-connected people here today. Foster communications and leave a legacy. Also, find us at our new website, inetalliance.com, inetalliancenetwork.com. Again, that's inetalliancenetwork.com. You can find a place where you can share stories with, communicate with, do commerce with. Also, we have community events, etc. On another calendar called NT Events. So I'm really excited about our new website at inetalliancenetwork.com, where we help publicize, amplifies, and strengthen our entrepreneurial foundation. And I am so excited to bring on my first guest right now. And her name is Linda Jensen. How are you, Linda?
I'm doing great, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing really great, and I'm glad you're on the show. And everyone, I'm with Linda Jensen of Heart Financial Group. You can reach her at linda@heartfinancialgroup.com or call her at 360-878-8065. Again, I'm with Linda Jensen of Heart Financial Group. And Linda, it's really interesting. One of the things that we talked about in the groom room, even before we even get into the show today, is we talked about heart set and mindset. And one of the things that I found in my life, I've been an athlete, I've served in the Marines, I did 2 church missions, I've always been a person about service. And I've always felt, you can't read mindset into passion. You either really have it truly or you don't. And so if you're in the right passion, your heart is already there. And I kind of wanted to get your take on that as well. On the statement that I say all the time, it says it takes, your heart set before you can work on your mindset. But if you have your heart set and your mindset set, then you'll always work on the skill sets. Do you kind of believe in that at all? Or do you have another way of looking at this?
No, I think, Robert, that you are spot on. I mean, in so many ways. And I love that you shared that because, our heart is the seat of our emotions. And in my business, I'm in financial services. People make decisions on an emotional level, you see. It can make logic sense, but they will hire you based off their emotions. And so you need both. You need the heart and you need the logic, right? And I agree with you. So in my case, I mean, I'm passionate about what I do. I have so much fun. I get to help people every day. So it's not a job or a business. It's more of a passion with me. And I just love helping people. So and what that's led me to do is actually I've taken 33 exams in my career. So it's translated over into the skill set, right? Because I really believe the more I know, the more I can help somebody. So I'm a lifelong learner. And it's just never been about the money either, because we're in the business of helping people. I don't know if you remember Zig Ziglar, but
Mhm.
that's exactly what he used to preach, right? Find people to help. The
Yeah.
more people that you have to help, the more money you can make, right?
Well, but you're also in a very interesting position, and I say that because I know in many ways I've been in the financial industry in my life. I've been a trader. I've also been a programmer with a company that we actually both worked for, which I found very fascinating when we were talking about that earlier today. And one of the things that I found is women were not really taken into the financial industry with open arms when I came in, even some 35 years ago. And it's been a struggle, but you've had to find your place. You've had to, be disciplined about working through the things that, other people take for granted. You had to just dig in, roll up your sleeves, and make things happen. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you survived and how you utilized your heart to get through.
Oh boy, that's a really interesting question. So I got licensed in 1994 with Prudential Preferred, and it was me and all the guys, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, we had no training. My training was here's a bunch of orphan accounts you can call on them.
Mm.
And I did. And I was excited. I had been a realtor when we lived in Florida. My husband was a business owner. So I was really excited. I felt like, gosh, I'm in business, but I don't have overhead. This is really cool, right? And it's just 100% production. You're not on a salary at all. So I made appointments. I went out and saw everybody. And I was really successful. I was up on the board, for my production and stuff. And the guys would ask me, they're just like, hey, how are you doing that? And I
Yeah.
was, just wasn't the most polite person. This is back when I'm a kid. And I'm like, well, I make appointments and I see them and accidents happen. That was my response. And Robert, I didn't realize that the guys hung around the office waiting for the manager to give them a case to write
Yeah.
or the phone to ring and steal your client.
Yeah.
So I got my broker's license, my CLU, my CHFC. I worked with them for 3 years and I left. So I've been independent advisor for 30 years.
Oh my gosh. I mean, to me, Linda, that's beyond amazing. I mean, one, having to fight into the business because I know it was a fight, and two,
Mhm.
staying in the business, excelling in the business, and really being a pioneer leader in this business. And that's what I find so fascinating. And what's really interesting to me is as entrepreneurs, I always say, be the prophet of your profit. You need to
Mm.
be the prophet of your profit. And so many times we we're the prophet of our business. We know our business, but we don't know our profits. We don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to budget it. We know where to place it. And I say at the end of the day, if you want to scale and expand, you better have numbers. It's not just systems. You better have revenue coming in. You better be able to produce. Systems are only as good as the goods and services that come through them. And I still remember a long time ago, and you'll love this. One of the first really big, large scale event that we ever did with my company, Sharon Lechter was one of the keynotes. And I still remember introducing her, and I go, "Oh, we have 16-time international best-selling author." And she looked at me and she looked at the audience and she says 17. And later I asked her, I said, "Does it really matter the difference between 16 and 17?" And she said, "Yes." And she goes, "It matters so much. It's like the difference between having 16 and 17 children." And my
Mm.
heart was like, oh. And she said, "Robert, the reason why businesses fail is they fail to know their numbers." Tell us how true
Mm.
that is.
Oh, that is so true. And in my industry, by the way, the failure rate is 90%.
Mm, that
90% do not make it. And I know that, and I'm always aware of that. And numbers are really important. You want to track your production. We're always involved in marketing. You want to make sure you keep doing what's working. And then if you're trying new stuff, you make sure you keep doing the stuff that's bringing in the revenue, right, while you're trying the new stuff. You don't want to just stop what you're doing and start something else that may not work, right? I mean, we always have to be conscious about our revenue, not only about our revenue, but how much we're spending, and make sure
Yeah.
that the spending is really smart, right? Because it's not only what you're making, but how much sticks. And then having a plan for growth. Do you need to add that employee? I think the hardest part in being in business is finding good employees, by the way. Good employees are really tough to find. And so there is so much to being an entrepreneur. There's so many different aspects to be really, really successful.
And I love what you say about good employees. One thing I found in my career, and I've had different levels, different companies for, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I can say 30 years so casually now. Um, and that's, I rewarded, I mean, I really did. I rewarded loyalty even over talent. And the reason, because it's like, if you have someone loyal, you have something that's continuous, you have something that's sustainable, you have someone where they get to know you and you get to know them, and you establish a certain amount of bonds. If it's only based in talent, I found that talent comes and goes so easily. And now, if someone can find someone who's loyal and has talent, I think you have the holy grail. But I've always looked for very hardworking, loyal employees over just the talent. I was wondering if it's the same in your business.
Yeah. Oh, it's exactly the same. You need the talent, but I want people to be here for the long term, and they're compensated very well. And then I bonus them too. So we have a bonus structure and other incentives, to help, and we work together as a team. I mean, my team, I'm very direct and to the point. I want everybody else to be very direct. I think communication is key. And I tell everybody it's a no apology zone. Don't apologize for things. Problems will always come up, but there's always a solution. We can find them. So if something comes up, you want to let me know right away. Let's just handle it, keep moving on. And we all want to really get to know each other really well. And I also believe, Bob, we all have strengths and weaknesses. I believe in delegating your weaknesses and just increasing your strengths. I don't think it helps. You're never going to really perfect your weaknesses. And so that's kind of what I teach everybody. And we have an environment where everybody feels, they're part of a team, right? And everybody knows their roles, and everybody's really very happy. You know what I mean? So we're really happy. We communicate well, we get along well. And if there's a problem, we just take care of it.
Gosh, that's so beautifully said. And the reason why I say that, it seems like so much of the time we're in many of the communities that I see, and especially in like this personal development community, it always seems like they stress so much for everyone to personally develop. And they include all these areas when, quite frankly, I'll never be a fit in trying to develop in so many of these other areas. There are other people who are very natural in those areas. And quite frankly, it creates frustration for me internally. And it also kind of erodes the confidence I have. And I say, let's find what your strengths are and stay in your superpower zone, because the more that you stay in your superpower zone, you're actually finding someone else to replace that you don't have. And that's what I loved about what you just said. But yet we're not always trained that, are we?
No. I think it's really served me well, Robert, to just have that mindset. And just to keep moving. There's a big difference between being busy and being productive, right? And we're always about being productive, and everybody knows that also, and they're compensated for that. I want everybody to feel they're part of the team. If they have any ideas, I want to hear them. Let's implement them if it's going to work. It's a very dynamic, organic process that we have, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn just a little bit here, and where I love that you're going is reading your name. And I love businesses. I love their names. I always say the most important thing that you can bring in any room is your name and the name of your business, because those are the two things you need to say with the most intention, because you want other people to remember it. You can educate them all day long, but you don't want to do it so well that you educate away potential clients to someone else. You always need to remain memorable. But you'd go one step beyond it. You know, it's not just education. In the name of your business, you have heart, not HART, but HEART. And I I'm kind of wondering, in the naming of your business, why was heart so important to put in addition to financial group for you?
Yeah. Well, it's personal. I think how we're different is, first of all, it's very personalized services that we provide. And I really think it's on a heart level. I mean, I've had appointments with somebody I met for the first time. They're crying in my office. I mean, they're talking about very confidential things. And from a financial standpoint, for us to do our work, they almost have to be buck naked, right? I mean, they're divulging all of this stuff. And it really is on very much a heart level. And how we're different is the very holistic planning that we do. I'm really big on tax planning, for example. I'm in Washington State. We have the second lowest state estate tax rate in the country. So a lot of, I'm an expert in tax planning. We do income planning, retirement planning, estate planning. Nobody seems to have their estate plans in order. 33 years in the business. Either people I've met have nothing or what they have is way outdated. So I really approach this from a very holistic level. And it's personalized service to the point where if people have to take out the required minimum distributions, when they turn that age out of their IRAs, we manage all that. So see, we manage all this. I don't want my clients calling 1-800-GOOD-LUCK. I mean, if they need anything, they call us, right? And so all of that, I think, is with a lot of heart because, life is tough, Robert. Everybody's got issues. You might have a disabled child. You might be caring for parents. Your spouse might have just died. I mean, there's so many issues that people have to struggle with. And I want to come alongside them and support them. I think that's where the heart comes from.
Well, I don't hear too often that, not too many CFPs, I'm not going to try to stereotype them. Everyone kind of say like, how are we going to dictate emotional intelligence into the relationships that you own? And it sounds like you incorporate that. You become an emotional partner, not just a financial partner with the people you serve.
Well, how on earth can you help people in a multifaceted level if you can't empathize for them? Like if I have a client that has a disabled child, well, we want to make sure we're going to have assets they're going to inherit and keep working when they're gone, right? I mean, that's a deal to take care of, and I manage everything with what I call the risks of retirement. So we do tax strategies for businesses to increase their profitability. But on the retirement plan, there are certain risks. The number one risk people worry about is running out of money, for example, and that's longevity risk and inflation risk. Then there's a stock market risk. Then there's one called sequence of returns, which has to do with pulling money out of your nest egg when the market's dropping. That can be devastating. Then you have if you have a huge IRA pre-tax bucket of money, taxes are going to be your biggest expense in retirement unless you have a long-term care event. And the last one is what I call legacy planning for surviving spouse. Because if one spouse dies, taxes go up and their income goes down. You can only keep one standard deduction instead of two. And your income goes down, you can only keep the higher Social Security check. If it's a pension, it's usually cut in half. So I have a slide I'll actually show people. It's for this year. Here's a couple. The husband has $30,000 in Social Security. The wife has 20. They're pulling 40 out of their IRA to live on. Taxes are $1,600. One of them dies. Let's say the husband dies. The wife decides to pull out more to make up the shortfall. Taxes jump to over $4,000, right? I mean, that's just and that's the planning that we do. And I think that's what kind of sets us apart is not only doing the planning and making sure the numbers look good, but also planning in light of these risks.
Yeah. Well, and people have fear. People have fear of facing their finances. And I think there's a few things in life that are considered like scorecards. You go to school and then you get a report card. You play sports and you're working against others and maybe a stopwatch. But the one other thing that we have in life that always follows us is what is the record of what we created, and have we kept what we've created through the course of our life? And a lot of people, they have concerns about that, but their current concerns should be greater that they're not doing something about it. How do you flip the script with people, and how do you get them to say yes when most people tend to say no?
So are you referring to
Like,
buying into my process, or?
yeah, well, I'm talking about, so many entrepreneurs who they're 30 years old, 40 years old. They're making pretty good money, but they still have this imposter syndrome that says, oh, well, I don't make enough to have someone, as a tax strategist. I don't need a
Well,
financial planner. They're afraid to open up the books, or they're embarrassed because they feel like they're not making enough money. Oh, well, I learned it from my dad or my mom, and I know whatever I'm doing, I've learned it from them and I'm okay. But most of the time it's not.
yeah.
How do you open up people's mind, let's say, or even heart, to say yes to getting some help versus staying in the same habits they've always been in? Because that is one of the toughest thing I've ever seen, is getting someone to change their financial habits.
Yeah. Well, making any changes is usually tough for most people. Making a change is not easy, right? So one of the things I'll do is I'll tell folks that, the average business owner is overpaying taxes by 62,000 a year. A really successful business is hundreds of thousands of dollars. Would you think it's worthwhile exercise to determine how much you're overpaying in taxes and develop a strategy to increase your profitability?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe something like that could work. Because I would tell you, I'm not in the chasing business. You know, I'm not at this point in my career, and I think people do have to be open. You're exactly right. They do have to be open. There's a lot of issues business owners could have. They have partners, they don't have buy-sell agreements, or they're not up to date, or they're not funded. That's a big problem. I mean, I work with a guy who and this is 35 years ago, he and his partner were each pulling $6 million out of a business, and they didn't have a buy-sell. His partner got pancreatic cancer and died within a month,
Oh
and
my goodness.
his wife decided to insert herself into the business.
Oh.
And the business didn't last 2 years. Okay. So there's real dangers in business. So I'm an educator at heart. So we're at heart. That's funny. But anyway, so the
No,
idea
that's great. I love it. Say it. I mean, own it. Own it.
I know. So, but anyway, so, for businesses, I just try to give them things to think about, if I
Yeah.
meet them, do you have a partner? Do you have a buy sell? What is your net worth? If they're in Washington, you see if their net worth is over $3 million, they have an estate tax issue. Those taxes are due 9 months after death, no exception, right? So, there's lots of strategies that we could employ, but you do have to have somebody who's open-minded, right?
Yeah.
And I think they have to understand, nobody knows everything, Robert, do we? We all need help at some point. And these things are not taught. They're not readily available. You're not going to get this information on the tax strategies from a CPA. There's a recent article in Forbes magazine, and the title of the article was "Your CPA Isn't Your Tax Strategist." And that's because they're all about deadlines and compliance and, checking all the boxes. And so we do tax planning. That's the difference. But you're right. You do have to work with a business owner who, first of all, will carve out some time,
Yeah.
right? Will actually be open to working with you so you can come alongside and help them.
Yeah. Which leads me to my last question, and it's one of the most important questions that I always think about. You always need to know your numbers. That is always continue. But like in everything, there's always the genesis of something, and then there's a potential ending for something. And much of the time, business owners never look at, like, what's going to happen at the end of their time of doing their business.
Right.
Does it fold? Does it go away because they go away? Is it in places and it go to the partners? Is it going to go to a kid? Are they waiting too long and maybe they could have sold it? There's so many questions to have, especially as a business owner or a team or partners start to get, let's say longer in the tooth. And many times I think the worst thing or the saddest thing that I see is businesses who have been helping people for years have that slow, dreadful death. But one of the things that you talk about to avoid that is something called an exit strategy. Tell us what an exit strategy is and why is it so important? I mean, not just for the partners, but even the clients who rely on those business owners.
Right. So I earned my certified exit advisor certification, Robert. And when I did, this is working with the Exit Planning Institute, I discovered some very disturbing statistics, and that's that 80% of businesses don't sell. And there's reasons for that. And then 50% sell involuntarily. And that means it's a fire sale. They're not going to get all of that, that they hoped for. I mean, you spend your whole life, decades maybe putting all their blood, sweat, and tears into a business. And that's your retirement plan. Usually 80% of the wealth is tied up in the business. You need a good exit, right? 50% sell involuntarily because of disability, a divorce, disagreement with a partner, dress like COVID, or death. My father drowned, by the way. He was a jeweler. He didn't have an exit plan. We literally had to sell his inventory for pennies on the dollar to care for my stepmother. So the book is called What is Your Exit Strategy? You can go onto a website that says whatisyourexitstrategy.com. Okay. And it outlines all of that. So one of the most important things a business owner can do is to make sure you have systems and processes in place.
Yeah.
And that's about chapter 2 in the book, by the way. And so if you have a business that has systems and processes, you can sell it.
Yeah.
If you don't, maybe you just have a high paying job and you can't sell a job. There was a strategy developed by the Exit Planning Institute called value acceleration. That's chapter 6 in the book, is about value acceleration methodology. That puts a business into a state of readiness to grow or sell. My strategic partner in that space last year, their average profits went up 65% and their revenue 43%.
No.
So there's real resources that business owners can take advantage of. You need pristine books if you're going to sell a business. You can't be telling stories, right? So there's a lot of things that a business owner could do. And one of the things is you need a team. Business owners think it's going to be busy. They never, ever know what the business is really worth. That's your enterprise value. And by the way, I work with somebody who does very high-end tax planning, and the business owner himself or herself should not get that evaluation. There's a problem with that. And so you should get a valuation for the business. Maybe your CPA would do it so that it's at hand's length for you, or arm's length for you. And so you need to know the value of your business, and you want to keep increasing that value of the business and increasing that multiple. And that's exactly what value acceleration methodology is all about, Robert. So there's definitely things that a business owner can do. I ran the numbers for Washington State where I am. If 70% of the baby boomers businesses don't sell, the rest of the baby boomers in the next 10 to 14 years, we could lose 40% of our jobs in the state. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it is a very big deal as well. Everyone, I am with Linda Jensen of Hart Financial Group. You can reach her at linda@hartfinancialgroup.com or call 360-878-8065. A beautiful Washington number, right? So again, I'm with Linda Jensen of Hart Financial Group. Again, reach her at linda@hartfinancialgroup.com or call 360-878-8065. Linda, stick around. We have a time of reflection after our next guest. But thank you so much with all the gold nuggets that I've been writing down as we've been discussing this in our show segment today.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Wow. Oh my gosh. How cool was that? Thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate all of your expertise in that. And I agree so much. It really is about, the people that your life and amazing employees, amazing partners, but really having a strategy. And one thing I'm really excited about is our next guest, Janet Alexander, who's coming on to the show, because I want to talk about a few things that we don't necessarily always talk about. And Janet, I'm so glad that you're coming onto the show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I love shows because it just makes me reflect immediately on my life and people that I know in my life and I love and care about. And like with Linda, her company's called Heart Financial Group. I have another heart here. I have Janet Alexander with Hearts and Minds Learning Center. So it's like, I mean, it couldn't get any better than this, can it?
I always think it's so synchronistic, right? And I think that we all, through laws of resonance, vibration, whatever it may be, we always find each other. And I think that our hearts are known. And that's my favorite thing about life.
Mine as well. Everyone, I'm with Janet Alexander of Hearts and Minds Learning Center. You can reach her at info@janetalexander.com or call 737-351-2505. Again, Janet Alexander of Hearts and Minds Learning Center. Reach her at info@janetalexander.com or call 737-351-2505. And 737, is that Florida?
It's Austin. It's a newer Austin code as Austin keeps growing.
Okay. I was thinking it was Florida. Maybe that's 727. Well, Janet, I'm originally from Texas, so hook 'em horns. We gotta love that.
Yeah, absolutely. What part of Texas?
I was right outside Dallas.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, in a little place called Garland, Texas. Back then we were called the Colonels.
That's neat.
And not kernels of, I always tell people from Iowa, not kernels of corn, kernels like the military rank.
Yeah,
so I just always like to clarify that. Yeah. So Janet, one of the things that we talked about, and I want to kind of go over this with you, is we did talk about heart set and mindset. But I believe so much of the time, any learning, there's always a genesis of any learning. There's always that first time, as a child, or an adult education, or things that we do want to know. And I always say there's two reasons to know more. One is to better your own life or to better others' lives. And that might be your clients, that might be your family members, that might be your parents. And I agree. I'm like with Linda. I am so in her same vein. I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning. But one of the things I don't want to do is learn everything. I've gotten to that point in time. I just want to learn certain things because I can't excel at everything. I just can't. And I wanted to kind of get your idea on, why Hearts and Minds Learning Center and what brought you to the point of creating your own business where people can learn, maybe more about their hearts and minds themselves.
Sure. Well, I think it really kind of piggybacks on what you're talking about in terms of when I was a classroom teacher, I really didn't want to do all of those pieces. I knew my craft. I frequently inherited kids with skills gaps, and I realized that my talent was repairing a child's relationship to learning, which means you have to touch their heart first. And as I started identifying this for myself, I realized the classroom is not for me. And it's fascinating because you would say, well, where else do you go if you want to teach children, right? Yeah. And through a series of events of my own genesis as a child, I was a child who was a neurodivergent learner. I was a very late reader. I realized that by the time I was in fourth grade, I was probably reading at about a kindergarten to first grade level, and the curriculums only accelerated in difficulty. And since they only accelerated in difficulty, and here I am treading water, I realized this might not be for me. But lucky for me, I was also really scared of my mom. I couldn't bring home a bad grade. And so it was a really good motivating factor, no matter, even though it's not necessarily a positive one, it's that resilient dynamic, right? The adversity that comes to help build that resilience IQ, the RQ. And so I taught myself to read. And then when I did, I remember thinking, I don't want other kids to struggle like this. I get it now. I figured it out. I would like to do this when I'm older, and that's what I did. So I paved my own way. I left I'm a college. I dropped out of graduate school because I didn't necessarily love the methods I was being taught there. And then even when I became a teacher, I also left the public school institution. And I realized even there, we want the kids to do all of it, but we're not celebrating their talents and their values. So what we do at Hearts and Minds is we do increase reading, writing, math skills about 1 to 3 grade levels in 3 to 6 months. But we're able to do it by telling the kids, this is not on you. It is not your job to learn all this. It is our job to figure out how you learn, and we fill in the rest. So as teachers, we get to teach. And we do it by meeting their interests. So we have a lot of neurodivergent learners. That means kids that have ADHD or dyslexia, autism, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, learning impairments, low IQ, all kinds of children with enriched dynamics, gifted abilities, but also disabilities. And so what we do is we learn what makes their heart tick.
I love that. And it's one of the things that we talked about before. I say before you can work on your mindset, you need to work on your heart set. But
Yeah,
if you have your heart set, yeah, if you have your heart set and your mindset, you'll always, develop those skill sets. And I think a lot of developing skill sets is also based upon belief.
Oh, I agree.
And many a times, if you are neurodivergent, you've many ways have a lifetime of family and school peers and society in general. It sometimes takes away, a child's beliefs that they can do greater things. And I think that that's what you do as well. Is I think you're a belief teacher as much as you are, a words and numbers teacher.
Absolutely. So after we figure how to connect the rapport and build the relationship with the child, we work on mindset next. So we work on neuroplasticity. We work on building stronger neural pathways, which is called cortical thinking. We design programs and calculate the algorithms for each unique child of what it takes for them to believe in themselves and to build the skill. And we turn this into an individualized program for them. And so I think you're completely right. You have to believe that you can. And so a lot of times parents bring us kids who may have already gone to tutors for 2 or 4 years and they're still not having success or they're still not reading, and we work on the mind. And how do you work a mind? Well, you have to build the confidence first. How do you build confidence? You have to prove it to them. Kids have to see
Absolutely.
the evidence of their efforts.
Well, that's something else that you brought up. You brought up your mom, and I'm going to bring up my mom as well. I mean, she was amazing. My mom is crazy cool. I love her to death. And my dad wasn't in my life as much as my mom because I was primarily with her. Come from a Hispanic family, so there's that kind of familia, and so it's like there was a tribe. There's always a tribe in a Hispanic family. I tell people. So there's so many. But one of the things, not everyone has that. Not everyone has the tribe around them. And I always say the most important place of education is not always the school. It usually starts with the parents. Tell us, how important is a parent's role in the education of their kids?
That is a very big question. It is primary. It is hugely important. It is essential. It is the lead. And if we're even thinking about it, the belief that one has in self is the belief that they will have for their child. So oftentimes we'll have parents where we also provide parental coaching. And we provide parental coaching in various dynamics. Sometimes we'll tell the parents, stop doing the homework at the kitchen table. Please stop. You're no longer allowed to do this. Let us do it. And I'll tell you when you can have it back. And I'll tell you how you will do it. And so we're even working with the mindset of the parents, believing that we can transform and change the child because they're so used to a story as well. And so it's fascinating what we can do when we do that for our kids. And it actually, the more I started doing that, I started doing it with my team of teachers. I've employed, I think, maybe close to 80 teachers in the last 10 years. And we've done this for over 2,000 kids so far in the last 10 years and had wonderful results. And so I wrote a book called The Highly Valued Teacher because empowered teachers will deliver impactful results. So if we have disempowered teachers, they're not going to empower kids. So you must be the anecdote.
Oh, I love that. One of the things I always come up with these, very interesting concepts, and, they're not proven, they're not tested, but I still believe them to be true myself. And
Sure.
I believe if if you if you go into any type of community, and it could be a classroom, it could be a home, it could be a place of business, I believe that energy can be entrained. I believe that energy can manifest itself. I believe that a person who goes in there, that they can feel it. And I believe that kids do as well. And
Absolutely.
to me, even without uttering a word, I believe that a child's mind can shift from negative to positive just by being in the proper environment. Would you agree with that in your teaching
Absolutely.
career? And
1000%. And my teachers that work for me, most of them know this too. It's the law of resonance, right? The
mhm,
kids know. And they piggyback off of our autonomic nervous systems for their own regulation. They know. So I always found it fascinating when I was in public schools that you would walk into that one teacher's room and it was peaceful and zen and creative or whatever. But, she had command over her students in mere presence, or he.
yeah.
But when I found myself, in someone who was perhaps having a lot more of their own dysregulation, their own anxiousness, their own unresolved beliefs as well, and obstacles, then that was being mirrored to them in the classroom. And so I talk about that law of mirroring a lot in The Highly Valued Teacher, and how we can identify and grow ourselves to a degree we would have never imagined. And in merely doing so, we are the catalyst for the kids.
And I love that. And you gave me goosebumps because you said something else that I just love. And I'm going to go along with Linda, because there's these two opposites, but there's still a convergence. Linda went into an industry where she was a trailblazer for women. You're in an industry that has been primarily women, but men are starting to come into the teaching profession. And I think that for me, that creates value richness that we've never had before in both industries. Tell me about your excitement about men coming into your industry and adding another voice in a place where I think for so long we haven't had it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love it. I employ a few men in my current office where I'm meeting you right now. And my own husband is in the business with me as well as one of our teachers. And they're highly requested by both genders. And
Yeah.
there's something wonderful that I think that men bring in terms of what I'll call an initiative energy, safety, a presence. I would tell you that I feel like the guys that work for us here, they bring this containment for us that's really precious.
Oh
And
my.
I think it's also kind of fun because there's these other human dynamics that happen here. We're mostly women of a certain age and we want to turn the air conditioner down because it's hot. Right?
Right. I've been around that. That
But
is great. And
but
and and,
these
and I
gentlemen
think,
bring
yeah.
greatness.
And I really think that really is good, because my mom said something to me, and she was a multicultural, non-sexist, bilingual educator. And one of the things she always used to tell me, she said, son or hijo, it's not a man thing, it's not a woman thing, it's a person thing. And she said the
Okay.
sooner that we all understand that, the sooner we can all move forward with velocity. And I think that that's why it's so important that men also take a stand with their partners, or in the education system, or being a part of a child's growth and belief opportunity, that their kids can see that how valuable they are, not just to women, but women and men, and people who want to put that investment.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that what it is at the end of the day? Just like Linda helps people with really an investment, that's their baby. They also learn it from people, their teachers, their administrators, their parents, the activities that they do. And when they see that it's man and women led, all of a sudden, doesn't the world start opening up a little bit more for them?
I think it's beautiful. I really do. And I mean, even in terms of it opening up for them, I think it's hard for sometimes a male child to not have some type of resemblance and representative of what their life and desire is like as well. Right. So
Mm.
like even when I remember one of my first classrooms I ever had, I think it was like 20 males to 7 girls. Okay. It was wild. And so Every day that year, I lived in trouble because I was taking these kids out to 4, 5, 6 recesses a day because they needed to move, right? And I
Run.
think that sometimes that in a highly feminine environment, we weren't as aware of that. I had grown up with a lot of boys, a lot of masculine energy in my life, and I was aware, oh, they need to go explore, they need to climb, they need to understand calculated risks from falling out of a tree.
And that's something that's really coming back, and I'm starting to see that a little bit as well. I call it sandboxing, and I believe that kids, yes, there needs to be some bubble wrap, but I feel like there also needs to be what you said, the calculated risk. It's making the fort, it's hammering the nail, it's getting a scuff, it's getting a
Yeah,
bruise, it's starting to understand an environment on their own individual terms without someone determining it what it is for them, that they can determine it for themselves. And I
absolutely.
believe self-exploratory is some of the best education that kids can receive, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it creates some of the greatest problem solving and inference skills too. As a nation, I don't know how much you know, but approximately, our average senior today in 2026 will be graduating with a high third grade reading level, right?
Uh,
And when it comes to this type of reading that they're being asked to do in high school, it is based on that exploratory understanding, the inference based learning of real life experience. But they're mostly behind tablets. And, we have curriculums that are very focused on content as opposed to human growth.
mm,
And if we aren't brave enough as educators to say no to something we realize isn't working, because this is officially, it's been documented in Forbes and Fortune. This is the first generation of kids that have a lower cognitive ability than their parents in America. Actually,
that's
it's starting to be seen across the world. So many countries are doing away with digital devices and returning back to that exploratory play.
mm. One of the things is in business we call them KPIs, key performance indicators, and those are the things that we look at to determine a KPI could be is my valuation of business in line with other businesses of like size, and like product or services. In my KPI, do I have an adequate margin between what I'm buying, let's say goods or services for, and what I get to sell them for? Same things like
Mhm.
that. I'm not saying the education is like that, but there's probably something similar to KPIs that measure success. I mean, there's always some
Absolutely.
type of testing, and so when it comes to the kids, what are some of the successes, and how do you measure those successes when it comes to your kiddos?
Oh, it's cool. So our slogan is that we're heart centered and data driven. So
I love that.
we calculate all of this data by measuring, what is the dexterity and capability within the hands if they're quite young. And then, if we ever get an eighth grader that doesn't like writing, we oftentimes find out, well, who likes writing like this? That's the wrong pencil grip. No wonder they don't like writing. So we really do a lot of diagnostics and observations, emotionally, behaviorally, academically, physiologically, to understand the child's relationship to learning, because
Yeah,
ultimately we find that whatever the relationship to self is also oftentimes how you relate to everything else. So what is the relationship to learning? And so by pinpointing these data points and measuring how many sight words are we reading at this point, how fast are we doing it, and something that we're really being a trailblazer for right now, no one's talking about this in education, is if you don't have strong ocular function, how do you expect a human being to read? So
mm,
we're even working with the ocular function and ocular muscles, to be able to help a child feel comfortable reading and not feel strained. And we measure that data through time. How fast are they doing it? So I want you to think about it. If we were going to go to culinary school, you don't just go in and you're a chef overnight. You have to sharpen those knives. You have to learn how to
yeah,
saute. You have to learn how to dice, mince, slice, all in isolation. And then on the game day, it's natural. But we
yeah,
we really break things down for our kids here and measure everything in isolation. And then when it comes to having to create the masterpiece, it's funner, it's more creative, it's it's something that they want to do and they engage. And we're even seeing that with kids that we have a lot of kids that have ADHD. I think 85% of our kids have ADHD. And the biggest thing that the parents say is like, listen, they're checked out all day. How do you expect them to come to your place and suddenly turn on, they have a lack of focus all day, and they're off of their meds by the time they get to you. And I tell them there is no child on meds by the time they get here. We meet them where they are. We make it fun. And what you were saying earlier about, value systems, I want to do what I'm great at. My team can take care of the rest, right? Like I'm not as good at that. We tell the kids, we point out to them what they're great at, and we explain, we just have to learn some of these tasks to this degree. You're not here to be great at that. We know what you're great at. Let's talk about it. Let's teach you about it. You tell me more.
And that's one of the things I always talk about, and I've learned from my mom and my aunt. I don't think that people totally understand what proficiency means. And I think proficiency is one of those words, whether it be in business or whether it be in school, proficiency has a meaning. And I think it's a word that we need to bring back because you can be very proficient at something. And in other things, it's okay to be proficiently average, which means we talk about it, but that doesn't mean we're an expert or we have mastery of it. Talk about proficiency and how valuable that is when you teach your kids.
Oh, I can't believe you're bringing this up. I was just ranting about it this morning. We work to the 90% in every skill that we're working to improve, the 90% mark. And I'm not talking about 90% to grade level all the time. Sometimes it might be beyond grade level. Sometimes it might be lower. But we're looking for our goals to hit 90%, and here's why. That 10% snowballs over time. If I have 10% gap in second grade and then add another 10% gap in third, and I get, keep adding it on, you have a pretty big gap by the time you get to high school. And that's what we're seeing in our modern day standardized benchmark curriculum, is that it just works you have to complete this content completion. Content completion does not mean proficiency and mastery. And so one of the things I notice when I go to business conferences is that I hear a lot of entrepreneurs saying it's so hard to find skill and talent. And it makes sense to me because our school systems have the lowest reading lexile levels in our history, of at least modern day history, with the highest graduation rates. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Interesting. And I think it leads ourselves to, we're so compelled to go from beginning to end that we're not concentrating on the teaching journey. We're not concentrating on the skill aggregation that one can find. And I've actually found some of the most proficient people in the world are the ones that actually had never finished because they didn't study for the test. They studied for the ability to utilize. And I think that that's something that we don't understand. We don't understand discipline enough. Discipline is very important for everyone. We don't understand nuance enough. We don't understand what it means to, like even in my life, like Myers-Briggs, that's been a test that's always been. And even in education, they gear education to the bell curve. And I was always an outlier in the bell curve. And I used to think I'm so much smarter than this, but why does it always look like I'm dumber than what I really am? And I think that that's what we're starting to see. Results aren't test driven. Results many times are productivity driven. And they're also, again, I'm going to use that word, standard proficiency driven, meaning my growth is an indicator of my success. It's not the total score or the end game that you're looking for every kid. And I think that that's something that we don't look at enough in our regular schools. And so now you got me going now. And I just kind of want to get your take before we break up into a huddle with all of us, because I think that we don't put enough we don't put enough space or focus on the areas of growth. We always seem to put it on what is that final score. And I just wanted to kind of get your take on that.
Absolutely. Well, there's so many different layers, so I'm just going to pick one as it relates to this.
I know, but wait, there's more, right?
Yeah, there's so much more, but I'm going to pick one that is what I'm really aspiring to bring to to the nation, to teachers across the US. When we send a child into an institution that's very much based on benchmark standard measurable mandates, right, and completion, but the curriculum increases in difficulty every day, every year, and we just don't focus on the growth that that child specifically needs, individualized for them.
Yeah.
What ends up happening to this child is once things get too hard, we start to see an adaptive behavior. And by the way, you can look at society this way too. What is an adaptive behavior? It is a disengagement when something is uncomfortable, not liked, a less desired task. It looks like fight, flight, avoidance, fawn, freeze, disengagement, disassociativeness. Let me go do some drugs instead. Right? There's a variety of actions and adaptive behaviors that people will engage in when the growth was not prioritized.
Right.
Rather, this is just what you're expected to do today. Do it. Whereas if we meet someone's heart and we meet their mind where they are and we scaffold it and prioritize the growth that's individualized to them, you build an empowered human being, an individual who feels capacitated, capable to succeed, to build further on their discipline, right? We build someone who feels creative. And that's what I really feel is a massive component missing in our society is being more
I am so there because I call that flex behavior. It means just because I haven't reached that point doesn't mean I won't reach that point.
Yes.
And that is so important. And what I mean by that is if my peer reaches that point, maybe they reach it 2 weeks before me. It doesn't mean I won't when I hit that flashpoint 2 weeks later, it doesn't mean I'm not going to kick in some accelerators of growth. And so much of the time we tend to stay in the place of where, and this is where you meet them where they're at, but you reward them on where they're going. And I think that's the place that we don't check the boxes on enough. So
I agree.
You and I are going to talk off page because we have so much more to talk about. Everyone, I am with this amazing, two amazing people today. Everyone, I'm with Janet Alexander of Hearts and Minds Learning Center. You can reach her at info@Janet. Sorry, golly, got me so excited. Can't even say the name right. I'm with Janet Alexander of Hearts and Minds Learning Center. You can reach her at info@janetalexander.com. Again, that's info@janetalexander.com, or call her at 737-351-2505. Janet, this is amazing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Linda back in. And I always like to do this at the end of the show because you both have said so amazing things. And what I love about you both is not only are you both lifelong learners, you're lifelong educators in your own way. And you both have an amazing heart for that. And so Linda, I just had a session or a segment of the show with Janet, and I just wanted to see if you had maybe a takeaway or two from our conversation.
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic, Janet. And I'll tell you, my husband has a bad case of ADD. My son is a particle physicist. I mean, and my husband's brilliant in a lot of areas, but and by the way, my son square roots at the age of 3. That is not normal. So I was on the other end. I was always on the other end trying to trying to keep him challenged, trying to keep him growing. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's also an area that you could possibly serve on, because it was really hard for me. The gifted and talent programs were never enough. I did something with Johns Hopkins for him. I was trying to, I did math. He went through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math all in 6th grade. So I was really struggling trying to keep this kid challenged. And then, I was thinking about your ADD too, because my husband got diagnosed in his 50s, by the way. That's not good to be that old. And, as you know, people who have ADD are really smart in certain areas and they get bored. I think a lot of the problem that they have with learning is that they're bored, right? And they need to stimulate.
I agree. I agree. And at the same time, how beautiful that they are hyper-focused because someone else has other talents, right?
Yes. So if you can tackle them, and find out what they want to learn. They get that hyper focus on. And then, by the way, my daughter-in-law and my daughter are both homeschooling kids. So my daughter has 3 little girls. They're 5, 3, and a year old. So, and I bought her the Waldorf materials, just so you know.
Oh,
So
cool.
maybe I should talk to you about that on offline here. But and it was interesting. The research she's doing, it shows that kids should probably not be in school till they're like 7, you know?
Yeah,
And
I
so
agree.
Vivian is learning to read. She's learning a lot of stuff, but it's been more like play and other things and not really the formal kind of stuff, because Catherine's kind of subscribing to that. And I'd like to know what your opinion is.
Well, I think it really
I want to jump in here.
Mhm.
Well, I've got to jump in here really quickly. You know, you
Okay.
said something that I really advocate. I believe that as well. And one of the things I do believe, if you start institutionalize learning too early, what you do is you institutionalize out self-learning. And I think that that's why it's so important for kids to just be immersed with their own learning, because that drives the passion for learning. Because if I'm driving it from the outside, how can they develop that muscle, so to speak? You know, and so I'm glad that you said that, because I don't hear a lot of people that have the courage to say something like that. And so I'm sorry, Janet, I just had to jump in on that, because I am all about
And Janet, too, our education system is a one size fits all. It doesn't make sense to me, because people learn differently, and our educational system fails on that.
Yeah,
I agree. I love that you brought that up, because we actually will work with disabled learners, but I had mentioned we also work with enrichment. And I will tell you that sometimes it is hard when you have kids with you that have higher IQs than you, and you're aware. And now you're navigating this whole other human being that will challenge in so many different ways. And sometimes you might not be fast enough to keep up with this human being before you. And so one of the things that we'll do here to entice them, especially because sometimes we'll find someone, especially let's say with autism, this is called a twice exceptional human being. They happen to have autism, yet they're more intelligent than anyone in the school, right? And so if we find that they have hyper-focused interests, and suddenly they can do all of this math in their head, but they can't read, we might make a curriculum and design something that's in their niche of interest. Like a few months ago, we designed a complete curriculum designed around horror films. And this kid, learned to read and write at 13 years old because we made it about his content of interest.
Love that. That is amazing. And Jana, anything that stood out from what in my second with Linda, anything that stood out for you?
Oh my gosh, all of it.
All of it.
I had to sell a business years ago because I was ill. And it was fascinating, right? I had to do a sale, and I didn't realize it was 80% of businesses that will find themselves unable to sell their business. I feel so lucky that I was at least even be able to sell. But another component, Linda, and I feel like I need to call you, my friend, the 1-800 good luck.
No.
I don't want to call that number anymore.
No.
1-800 good luck. I love that.
It was brilliant, but it's true. I've never thought about, I've been mostly relying on my CPA to help me with the taxes, thinking that there was strategy built in, and not really such an oversight on my end.
No, it's all historical.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not forward thinking.
No, absolutely not. And I'm so glad I got to meet you today. It was just such a blessing to learn from you.
Yeah.
Well,
same here. I have a lot of notes. I loved, because we want to teach our children to be independent, right? And I think
we want
part of
independent and yet interdependent.
Independent thinking, learn critical thinking.
Yeah. And I think even interdependent in learning from others, whether that be limited mindset or progressive, being able to understand and read the resonance of, does that sound good to me?
Yeah.
Right. Does that really feel?
I love the building confidence part too, people always complain, but they rarely give compliments to people who are really doing stuff right. But we complain all the time.
It's
and
very
I
true.
think you need to catch them doing something right, I think, with children, don't you?
And we build that into our program here too. We have games built into this really long highway. They can shoot hoops if they do something right, play, Connect 4. They can even earn prizes. They can walk the dog. We have emotional support dogs. So if they're one, displaying discipline and effort, they are rewarded on that, not outcome. Because when we're only rewarding outcome, you will kill the discipline, you'll kill the motivation, you'll kill the initiation, the agency we want to see in a human being that wants to live a fulfilled life. So
and you want them to be creative. You want them to be creative.
Absolutely. So initiative, creativity, thought, effort, that is rewarded.
Yeah.
And are your classes online or are they in person?
They are in person, but believe it or not, we're going to launch another company probably later this year or early next year called Reading Skills Center. And it's going to be built to neurodivergent children, both in enrichment and on that big spectrum of enrichment to disabled. And we'll have videos and explanations to parents on how to do it, not just read this curriculum. I want you to hear the emotion. I want you to see how we do it.
Hey, Janet, Robert should connect us offline because a friend of mine she's a psychiatrist and she teaches at Columbia University in New York City. And she has a child who's autistic, by the way. He's starting college next year.
Oh, great.
And she's actually writing a book about parenting neurodivergent children.
Well,
I love that.
Well, everyone, I am so glad that we were able to get here on the show today. And I just want to thank you both for being on the show. I think this was an amazing connection. I think it was a very much a heart-centered connection. And I'm going to close out my show. Stay around for afterwards and we can exchange contact information. And here we go. I want to thank my guests, Janet Alexander and Linda Jensen, on being on the iNet Publishing House radio show, iNetrepreneur Network Radio. My name is Robert Jones, and please join us each Thursday from 2:30 to 3:30 Arizona time. We're that crazy maverick state where everyone else changes but us, and that's okay. So you guys make it a great day, and we'll see you here next week.
You've been watching the iNetrepreneur Show, a production of the iNetrepreneur Radio Network with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.